What if I told you that one of the characters everybody rags on as being the worst in the game is actually quite incredible? Well, hi, my name is Blossoms and welcome to another Genshin Impact video, and today we're going to be talking about a burst support Amber and just how actually incredible she is. Now, there's a certain aspect to Amber that really allows that, and we'll be going over that and more in this video. But before we do, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this type of content. But without further ado, let's go ahead and show off this burst support Amber. First of all, we need to know a little bit about her talents because that is a very important part to how all of this works. First of all, she has an explosive puppet that she can just kind of toss around, and it taunts enemies and deals a big pyro AoE, and you can hold it to determine where it goes. It's nothing incredible. This taunt is actually quite lackluster, considering enemies can just bat it away across the map, which is really unfortunate. If they kind of stayed in place, this would actually be a much better ability, and I really did wish it had some sort of variable trigger where you could just kind of detonate it or whenever you want or something. I think that would make this ability much better, but it's also not bad, and we'll get into that when we get into the Constellations sections, because Constellations do matter a bunch on Amber, so we'll be going over those as well. Now, the most important part as to why Amber is actually an incredible character is her elemental burst. Fiery Rain here is much better than people give it credit for. It's very simple. You just do a bunch of AoE pyro damage. It's not even that huge. It's just a rain of arrows dealing pyro damage. And it has a decent total fiery rain damage number, but they're individual numbers, so you can't get like a big hit off of it or anything. But the total damage is pretty solid, and the duration's only 2 seconds, which is really low, but it does have a low cooldown of 12 seconds and an energy cost of 40. So what makes this so incredible? Well, that's the fact that Fiery Rain kind of ignores the internal cooldown system. Now, a lot of you may not know, but there's an internal cooldown system for a lot of abilities in Genshin Impact that allow you to apply an element only at a particular rate. So characters like Yoimiya, when she's in her E skill and her normal attacks deal pyro damage, she can only actually apply the pyro damage she's doing like pretty much every other hit or something. It's like 1, 3, and 5, I believe. And that makes her a lot worse than some characters who could just, you know, apply that element or do like a big damage number with an elemental reaction or something. And that is a big factor for how good a character is. And the Fiery Rain here basically ignores that kind of nerfing concept that MiHoYo has implemented on a lot of characters to keep them from going way into the atmosphere as to how good they are. And since Fiery Rain does ignore that for a whole 2 seconds, you can really start to take advantage of that, and we will talk about that as well. So just know that this is a cornerstone of this build, and also know that you don't even really need to have these all that leveled. If you want to be dealing good damage, of course, you're going to need your explosive puppet damage leveled, as well as Fiery Rain. They're going to be helping you out at least a little bit. They're not huge sources of damage, but if you do play the explosive puppet right, you can actually deal really huge damage with this. I've actually hit like 45k with my explosive puppets before, but that's because I have the Constellation. But if you do manipulate them properly, you can actually get some big hits with those, so that's a good thing to level. And the Fiery Rain I just leveled because you're going to be using it anyway, might as well deal some more damage, but you don't necessarily need to have it leveled to make it do the very important thing that Amber is good at. Also, the fact that her cooldown is 12 seconds is very important, and we'll talk about that when we get into the artifact section. She also has a passive to where it increases the Fiery Rain AoE and the crit rate, which is actually very nice because you can manipulate certain weapons with this, and we'll get into that when we get into weapons. She also has this passive that aim shot hits on weak points. It increases your attack for 15% for 10 seconds. This is kind of nice. I mean, it's just going to be extra attack if you need to hit a weak point like a Ruin Greater in the sky or anything. I particularly don't think this is amazing, and there is actually a reason for this. You can alternatively build Amber to be like a big crit hit damage dealer, and you can be very effective with Amber as that as well, but it's really not going to help you too much on the support side for like a burst support Amber, but it can help you if you just want a random 15% attack bonus. Definitely not the worst. Okay, before we get into artifacts, weapons, and team comps, all that, we really do need to talk about her Constellations, because Constellations do come into play for Amber. Her C1 here is essentially fires 2 amber arrows per aim shot. The second one only does 20% damage. This is nothing crazy. This is pretty nice for a later constellation. We'll talk about that. Which is actually the C2 Baron Bunny New and Improved. Hitting Baron Bunny's foot with a fully charged aim shot manually detonates it. Explosion via manual detonation deals 200% additional damage. So the reason that C1 is good is because you get 2 arrows, so it means you're less likely to miss Baron Bunny's foot because they do make you hit the foot of Baron Bunny to trigger this, which is weird, but it does allow it to deal that huge additional damage. And that's what I was talking about. That's what allowed me to hit like a 45k crit with my Baron Bunny before and like a melt proc. And so that is actually pretty important. Her C3 just upgrades the levels of her Fiery Rain, and her C4 is where Amber really pops off. And if you have a C4 Amber, I recommend you build her, because this reduces the cooldown of your explosive puppet and gives you an additional one. And so although these explosive puppets aren't that amazing, you can trigger them to deal big reactions if you are paying attention and detonating them at the right times. Now, when it comes to C5, you just get that additional level, and then the C6 is actually really, really good, and I really want it. Whenever you cast her Elemental Burst, it increases all party members' movement speed by 15% and attacks by 15% for 10 seconds, which means when you're abusing her Elemental Burst the way we're going to be doing, you're going to get free movement speed and free attack, which is just very nice. So ever since I've learned this, I really want this C6 now, and it really does help her out a ton. All right, artifacts for Amber. We're just using the 4-piece Noblesse Oblige. It just works really, really well on her. You get the extra Elemental Burst damage, and you get the extra attack for your other party members that are going to be the main damage dealers anyway. And it lasts for 12 seconds. And if you weren't paying attention earlier, Amber's Elemental Burst lasts for 12 whole seconds, so you can keep this up indefinitely, which isn't that hard if you're playing her right. As I said, those Baron Bunnies do come in clutch for a big reason, and that is not only because they can deal that big burst damage, but because of the fact that they generate a ton of particles whenever you actually detonate them and hit an opponent, and it'll basically just give you your burst for free if you have the right energy recharge stat. As for the main stats on all of this, you can just build her like a normal DPS. Attack percent, pyro damage bonus, and crit rate to crit damage is going to be very important. Crit rate and crit damage on your substats is also going to be very important. Elemental mastery is going to be semi-important, not nearly as important. You're probably going to get a couple reactions here and there, especially with the Baron Bunny, so that's actually a very nice stat. Energy recharge, of course, is going to be really good, as we just said, for getting that burst off of cooldown, which isn't that difficult if you're using the right weapons, and we'll go into those as well. But if you are really hurting on energy recharge, then energy recharge on the sands is also fine, because as I said, Amber isn't typically going to be the huge source of damage. She does have her moments with the Baron Bunnies, and the Elemental Burst does provide some decent supplemental damage, but it's not really too crazy. So if you need the energy recharge, and energy recharge sands is fine here. You can also use something like the 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate. This isn't going to buff your teammates, which kind of sucks because that is a big portion of this, buffing the teammates, but it does buff your Elemental Burst damage and help you out with your energy recharge if you really need it. But I don't think it's really a clean substitute to the Noblesse Oblige. Noblesse Oblige is just really incredible on her. All right, as for weapons for Amber, you have a couple choices, and I'm going to be using Elegy of the End because I did just get it. I got very lucky on the weapon banner and got this pretty early on Pity, on stream actually, and if you want to catch those streams, you can catch them every Monday, 11 a.m. EDT. We also do an extra one on the weekends on Saturday or Sunday, so if you want to check those, then stop by. But you can use Elegy at the End because it is absolutely incredible. High energy recharge substat, gives her extra elemental mastery, and buffs your allies with 100 elemental mastery and increases their attack by 20%. Just basically for using her elemental burst. If you use her elemental burst, you're going to get this buff. Because of the way it works, you just have to hit an opponent 4 times with like elemental skill or elemental burst damage, and it'll, you know, it can trigger every 0.2 seconds, and you'll basically get this done, is what I'm saying. You'll get it with the elemental burst, and it's very nice on her. You also have the option of the Favonius Warbow, and this is what I was using up until I got lucky with the Elegy at the End on this build, because you have high energy recharge subsets and crit hits, which is going to be happening very easily, considering her passive gives her that extra crit rate on her elemental burst. And if you have like a high refinement of this, you can just keep this up all the time and generate a ton of energy for the team. This is going to really help with quick swap teams and just generate energy for the entire party. So this is an incredible option as well. The Stringless isn't the worst either. If you have really good energy recharge substats and crit rate and crit damage, then the Stringless actually isn't a bad option. High elemental skill and elemental burst damage increases along with elemental mastery can't really go wrong. The Windbloom Ode also isn't too bad. It does rely on the elemental skill, which, as we said, is a little wonky, but it does give an attack increase, so that is kind of nice. But other than that, there really isn't too much to use on this build. You could go Sacrificial Bow or something, but I really don't recommend it. I'd say the Favonius Warbow and the LGDN are the top picks here, and you can use other things, but it won't be nearly as effective. One honorable mention is actually the Viridescent Hunt, just because you can create a Cyclone, which will suck the Baron Bunnies in as well, which is kind of nice. So if you really need the crit rate and you have good energy recharge, then that's also not the worst option. And I just thought it was kind of cute and funny, but definitely not the best. All right, as for the attributes of my Amber, forewarning, I'm cheating a little bit because we have a double Pyro party right now, so our attack's a little high. It's usually about like 16 to 1500, I'm pretty sure. But we do have 41% crit rate and 189.1% crit damage. And the reason I'm not really too worried about the crit rate is because, as I said, she's not a huge source of damage. So if we do crit, cool. If we don't, it's really not that big of a deal. And we do get the extra crit percentage on her elemental burst because of her passive, so do keep that in mind. We have 168 energy recharge. This is plenty. I get her elemental burst off cooldown all the time, especially if a single Baron Bunny hits the opponent. That is just going to proc, and you're going to get your elemental burst off cooldown. 46.6% pyro damage bonus, and that's pretty much it. 116% elemental mastery. Very nice for some melts and stuff, and we'll talk about that when we talk about teams. All right, this is basically the most important part of the video, because although Amber does have this amazing elemental burst that ignores internal cooldown, you still need to know how to abuse it with the proper characters. And one of the main characters that can abuse this is actually Xingqiu. Xingqiu is incredible for abusing this because of the fact that he can vaporize both of the hits in his E skill, and if you have him with a sacrificial sword, you can vaporize all 4 of the hits on his sacrificial sword. So what that means is you can quad vaporize with Xingqiu during Amber's elemental burst, just for getting his energy going like you would normally. And this gets actually insane if you have something like Evil Soother that increases the damage of Fatal Rain Screen by 50% during his elemental burst. So 1, you're just going to be recharging your elemental burst like normal, and 2, you're going to be quad vaporizing, which is really insane. So Xingqiu is an insane example for how to abuse this. We have a clip of this later of him just absolutely demolishing the Cryo Regisvine, so stay tuned for that. It's really crazy, and actually one of the best DPS teams for Hu Tao, believe it or not, is Hu Tao, Amber, Xingqiu, and Kazuha, just because of the fact that you can get this amazing burst DPS from casting Amber's elemental skill, quad vaporizing with Xingqiu, and then going back to Hu Tao and just popping off. Now, of course, this takes a lot more technical play, and you don't really have that much defense on the team, but it does do a lot of damage. Another character that can really take advantage of this elemental burst window is Chongyun. He can triple melt and quad melt if you count his E skill after. So you can cast Amber's elemental burst, hit his Q, triple melt, and then use your E skill for an extra melt. And if you do have his Constellation 6, you can quad melt and then get the extra one from his E skill as well. So you can quintuple melt if you really so choose. So that gets really out of hand on him too. I don't have his C6, so we'll only be showing the quad melt on mine, but you can get the quintuple melt if you really want to. You can also abuse this with Child, who can get a big vaporize going in, and then the first few attacks of his E skill or something are going to all vaporize as well. That's very strong, but not nearly as insane as like some of the other ones that I've been mentioning, but this is very effective too. Another character who really abuses this is a character I unfortunately don't have, and that is Mona. And Mona, believe it or not, her buff that you get from her elemental burst to be dealing extra damage lasts for, you guessed it, 2 seconds. So you can not only abuse Amber's burst for that 2 seconds, you can abuse Mona's burst for that 2 seconds. So if you combine Mona and Amber's elemental burst with somebody like Xingqiu, you can go absolute sicko mode, honestly. It is ridiculous. You can deal so much damage, and that is the reason, believe it or not, Amber is banned from a lot of speedrun tournaments for Genshin Impact because she enables this specific interaction. It gets really out of hand when you combine her with somebody like Mona. Other than that, there aren't really many characters that can abuse this mechanic. I'm sure we'll get more going forward, but you can actually double melt with Ganyu, I believe, with her charge attack if you're quick enough, but it's kind of hard to execute. I wouldn't really recommend it. and there just really isn't that many people that can take advantage of it as well as the characters that I've shown you so far. All right, that's enough talk. It's time to actually show it off. We got a couple clips for you guys and no commentary here that actually shows you just how strong Amber can be as an enabler. I've been having a blast playing her, and I look forward to playing her more and trying to abuse this mechanic as much as possible going forward, as it's very fun and cool, and I'm very glad I learned this, as it's made Amber a much more fun character than she was previously. And I also do want to make the charge shot Amber build as well, just to see how that works out, but it's definitely not as cool or interesting or strong as this one in my opinion. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. This is going to be it from me. My name is Blossums, and I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed these clips of abusing this mechanic, but other than that, have a good one. Peace, guys.